welcome everybody. Before I start, and I will stand up to do this part because I think this is important, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we come together to do this course. And for those of you who are listening on a recording in the future, firstly, I hope the day is as nice as it is today and that you're somewhere outside listening to me. But secondly, I'd like you to do the same, is just to ground yourself for a moment and just remember that we stand and work on land that has had people on it for more than 60,000 years, that is unceded, and we pay our respects to the traditional owners of that land and to their leaders, past, present and emerging, and in particular to those who might be amongst us today. And I like to do that when I start my classes because I think, firstly, it's an incredibly respectful thing to do, but secondly, it acknowledges that we've come together to do something serious and important, and that we're here to learn. And I just like the connection, so I hope you agree with me. So for those of you on the recording, we are actually sitting around a boardroom table to do that. I suspect that you will hear some noises as people come and go because it is 9 a.m. right now in the past. On a really unusually beautiful spring Melbourne day, like a cruelly beautiful day, which is really, really not fair. My name's Cathryn Nolan. For those of you who haven't met me, I think most of you have. I'm actually only seeing two faces in the room that I don't think I've taught before. Is that right? Have I taught you before? No. I'm sorry. You're in for a treat. Well, I say so. So, let me get this started. Come on. Oh, what? It's working already. So, what are we going to do today? I've said in this slide pack, but I will probably, and this recording, but I'm no doubt going to change packs to give us a break, and we're going to have breaks across the day. But across this first section of the morning, I just want to introduce some concepts to you. We're going to go through the administrative stuff. Before you all get too stressed about it, we will talk about what the assessment tasks are and what the expectations are. And then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. So for those of you who have been with me before, much of this is pretty much the same as you've seen before. So we can move relatively quickly, but I just do want to ground us in the beginning. That's me in the past, not in the future. I really need to update my photos. Like, can you see? Do I look terribly different? So yeah, I think that photo was taken just before I started teaching at RMIT, which was literally this class. Not in this room, but the very first time I taught here in 2012 was acquisitions, takeovers and mergers. And they only let me do it every now and then, so I think this is the third time. So I'm kind of, it turned out I really like teaching, and so I'm kind of a little bit sentimental about this class because it kind of gives me an option to see, well, what have I learnt? How have things changed? What do I do differently now? It was absolutely terrifying doing it the first time, and it's not a lot less terrifying now. But I think I'm better at not showing it because on my very second day of doing this, it was also done as intensives. We got locked out of a room. There were only 6 people in the class. Only one of them had shown up on time. We're trying to work out how to get in. I've got no idea. And this lovely woman, who is now a good friend of mine, looks me in the eye and says, "You've never done this before, have you?" I'm like, "No, I have not." I really needed to learn to lie sooner. So I'm pretty easy to contact. I'm really easy to contact, and I really don't mind being contacted. I think there's a kind of internal algorithm you guys should use, though. If you are really stressing about something and you need an answer, I have a phone number. Phone numbers are really easy to use. Just ring me. If I don't know who you are, I will probably only answer the phone if I'm not with somebody else. Actually, the reality is, if I am with somebody else or I'm in a meeting, I won't answer the phone. But if I know who you are already, because you've rung me before, I will have your name in my phone and I will ring you back. If you don't leave a message telling me who you are, I probably won't ring you back. So first time you ring me, leave a message, tell me what it is, and I will get back to you. Or send me a text message, tell me who you are, what your question is. I'll get back to you pretty quickly. Usually within hours, unless I am travelling, which I do a bit. And in between our next couple of classes, I am going to Cambodia for a week. So I use WhatsApp and Viber. You can use the same number to contact me on those. Again, the same rules kind of apply. If I don't know who you are, I am not going to be calling random people back. If it's less urgent and you are less stressed, send me an email. There is an very lovely email system in Canvas, but I don't spend my whole day with Canvas open. In fact, I don't spend many days with Canvas open. So what happens at the end of each day, I get an email telling me that there's an email in Canvas. It's probably quicker for you to just email my RMIT address, and I check. I also don't spend my whole time in email, but I check them about 4 times a day. So I say I'll get back to you within 48 hours. It is rare for me to take that long, but I'd rather surprise than disappoint, although that's undone by saying that right now. I also have, and actually it may not be in Canvas yet, but I have a link where you can just book a time with me. And it'll set up a Zoom meeting, and you can set up a 15-minute consultation at a time that will already suit me and suits you. So that's pretty easy to do as well. And actually I think I'm going to add that to the bottom of my email, my normal email, not the emails that come out of Canvas, but I'll make sure that that's in there so you've got it. Even so, don't think that the way to get an advantage over everybody else is to ask that question about something that I completely mucked up explaining so that you've got unique understanding. Because if you ask a good question, and the reality is that you will, I will probably share it and my answer to it on Canvas somewhere. I won't name you. I will probably thank you, but I won't name you, but I will repeat it. So again, another good way, particularly if it's not urgent, particularly if a number of you are having a discussion about something that you would like to explore further, use the discussion boards on Canvas. I do check them every couple of days or so, or I try to. I genuinely believe there's no such thing as a stupid question. I do believe there are such things as a stupid answer. Like on the way that we're going to work, chances are I will be doing more stupid than you will because I get to answer a lot of the questions. I really want us to work on what is often called in boardrooms the emperor's new clothes idea. So we're sitting around a boardroom table here. We're going to be discussing a number of different kinds of commercial transactions. And one of the things that board directors are constantly asked to do is to trust themselves, back themselves. If you think that you have, if you don't understand something, chances are that that's because it hasn't been explained fully or correctly, or there is information missing. So people who are decision makers are often asked to make decisions based on what I think of as a pyramid of information. There's, all this work has been done on the bottom, and then it's turned into reports, it's built up the chain. And if something doesn't make sense, it is incumbent on directors to ask those questions. So most of you, actually, can I have a quick indication? Who's done company law already? Okay, most this time. I had more than a third last time, and I know from the emails that many people who aren't in the room yet or who are on the recordings haven't. So we will touch base into that. Hey, come in, take a seat. Actually, I'm a great believer in the telling of stories, so I'm going to do that a bit. You kind of need to just time me out if you think it's not relevant. But when we're thinking about storytelling, thinking about asking questions, there's a great story from the GFC. So have any of you heard of the investment company Vanguard? Yeah, a few of you. So one of the things that Vanguard is relatively well known for is it's a relatively conservative investment firm, and it came through the GFC significantly better off than many of its competitors. And one of the reasons for that is it didn't invest in some of the complex real estate bonds that were the undoing of Lehman Brothers and others. And that wasn't because its sales team didn't want to do these products or didn't want to get involved in these products. It actually came down to a 40-something-year-old compliance officer called Mabel Yu. And I think of Mabel as one of the heroes of the GFC, because Mabel was in her early 40s. I think she had training initially as an actuary, but she had basically worked in compliance for Vanguard for a very long time. And the sales team wanted to sell these complex products. All of the competitors were making a huge amount of money out of these complex products. And in order to go through the chain, the compliance team, Mabel's team, needed to sign off on it. And Mabel would look at these products, and she didn't understand them. She could not understand how they actually provided the kind of return that they were advertising, and they were in fact returning on paper, at least at the time. And she was under enormous pressure, both upwards and downwards. So she had more senior people than her basically calling her in the middle of the night, screaming at her that these products needed to be approved so they could sell them. And she had salespeople who were trying to get them through at the other side, screaming at her, telling her that they needed to be approved. But at the end of the day, she took her job pretty seriously, and she said, look, I'm actually really well trained. We have a process for doing this. There is a reason that I need to sign these things off. People are trusting me to sign off that I understand these products, and I don't. So if you can explain it to me, if what I'm missing. She was apparently perfectly happy to be wrong, but she had to back herself. In the end, it turned out those, before they were ever approved by Vanguard, well, they never were, they started to collapse because they didn't work because of the complexities in them. One of the things I really like about this story is that Mabel's contribution was really well recognised by Vanguard, and in accordance with their policy, she was taken out to lunch in the company cafeteria by the CEO. Her praises were lauded, and she got a small bonus, literally a small bonus, $10 gift card for saving that company ultimately billions and billions of dollars, possibly its life. So anyway, if you ever need a reason to think, okay, I might be a little bit embarrassed asking this question, I don't understand, I think you can think about Mabel and think, actually, if I don't understand, I can back myself, I'm a smart person. I'm supposed to talk a little bit about me. Most of you know me a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about the background that brings me here. So I am this month I celebrate 30 years with a practicing certificate that has been continuous over that time. So yeah, pretty much everything I learned at university is redundant. I was a corporate M&A lawyer for probably the first 22 years of that. I started, believe it or not, in infrastructure projects, mainly mineral sands exploration, and then where did I get that word from? Electricity. So I was on the team that was involved in the first couple of privatisations of power plants in Australia. The Gladstone power plant in Queensland, and then Loy Yang A&B down here in Victoria. I worked for big firms. Well, they were big firms at the time. They're like small to moderate sized firms these days. I started at Cause in Sydney, which at the time, Melbourne was definitely the big brother firm. And this was before it was it was Cause, Pavey, Whiting and Byrne at the time. So there were only 9 partners in Sydney, which was great because we did big firm transaction work, but all of the juniors did a lot of things. My cohort, the 4 of us who started as juniors at the same time, have all gone off in very different directions. One of them was the treasurer for a while and then was the previous ambassador in Washington. So you can imagine, those of you who spent any time with me, how well he and I got along. And actually, Joe's a good guy. He's just... I'm making signs. Anyway, let's leave Joe alone because he's bigger than me. Another one ended up in DFAT, has been first secretary all over the place, now works for CSIRO in a policy role. And the other one is a managing partner now of a moderately sized firm that is about 5 times bigger than Cause was at the time that we started. And interestingly, his name is John Howard, which is kind of the world's worst name for somebody of our age. In fact, it's worse than that. His name is Howard John Howard. And so, anyway, I'm really going off track and we've not even started. So I basically moved through my career after being in big firms. I then spent a little bit of time in an investment bank that was owned by the Guangdong province back in the lead up to the Hong Kong handover. I then went from there into medium-sized firms. I've always had legal or quasi-legal firms even when I was in the investment bank. And then for a little while, I basically had my own firm. But I had pretty much 5 clients, one of whom I was intimately involved in was probably 4 days a week. And then I went on staff with them. We listed that company. It was a fintech company. I ended up joining the board and I was company secretary there. And then we were on the wrong side of a boardroom battle. And the CEO and I were unceremoniously kicked out. The share price then dropped dramatically. We did have a few problems, like launching a fund in the UK on the Wednesday before Lehman Brothers collapsed was not exactly the best timing that you could ever come up with. But anyway, they're still using our strategy, so we feel vindicated. So the CEO and I started a new fintech company, which listed about 3 or 4 years ago now. People who take startups to listing as supposed to be telling you these awesome success stories, or you hear these great failure stories. People never talk about the people in the middle, and I'm very much in the middle. Both of the companies that I've taken to listing they're alive, they're trading, but they're not profitable at this stage, and the share price is significantly lower than anybody would like. Excuse me. And so we sit in that in-between place where we're surviving but not thriving. So again, some interesting lessons out of that. In my time as a partner of a law firm, once I started in infrastructure, but I'm a geek, I'm interested in technology, and particularly when I started working in the investment bank, I moved my financing interests into technologies, and emerging technologies in particular, and that's the space that I've worked in for most of my professional life. I still have my own practicing certificate. I still work with and mentor a number of startups, particularly at the early stage funding, which is the kind of things that we're going to be talking about today. In the couple of years when we were building Domicom, which is the second of the startups that I listed, I was basically living off my savings and building this company, and I have a interest in travel that is hard to justify when you don't have income. So I ended up with the opportunity to come and do some teaching. And I thought, okay, that's going to fund some of these other things that I want to do, so I'll give it a go. It sounds like a good challenge, and I've kind of been doing that ever since, and it was a really great challenge for me. I've really enjoyed doing it. So that's a little bit about me. I'm really interested, and hopefully that gives you a sense of some of the credentials that I bring to teaching this subject. I have, as a lawyer and as a business owner and as a client, taken companies through pretty much all of the transaction types that we will talk about, like other than contested takeover. I've never yet actually run or been involved in an on-market contested takeover yet, and I don't plan to be. And actually, here's a dirty little secret. Chances of any of you actually doing that as a lawyer are relatively slim. And if it's your passion and that's what you really want to do, chances are you can get there for sure. But when I first came in, one of the big changes I've made to this subject in teaching it, even though it was called acquisitions, mergers and takeovers, the content was 100% takeovers. And I have now slammed all of the content that we did over 6 days into 1 day in a 4-day course now, on the last day. But all of the others, I have done many, many, many transactions. And those of you who have any interest in being commercial lawyers will find that a large part of the work that you do will be buying and selling businesses, whether there's share purchases, which are more likely these days, or business, and we'll talk about the reasons for that as we go through, or whether there's sale and purchases of businesses. That is a large chunk of what commercial lawyers do. Just want to talk about some expectations. I'm always going to start and finish on time. Literally on time. Like I don't often give you a minute or two earlier leaving, and we start pretty much on the nose. It's better if you're here when we start, but in a choice between coming a little bit late, walking in quietly and just settling in, and not coming at all because you'd be embarrassed to be late, come late. Like, it's going to be fine. It's as much as, and I do go, I think, to an extraordinary effort to get good recordings. At the end of the day, if you can be here in person, for those of you who are in the face-to-face class, usually it is easier for you to get the information. Also, we notice when you fall asleep and kick you, where I can't do that on the recording. Participating, again, I want to have a conversation as much as we can, but I recognise that participating, it means different things to different people. And so if somebody's being quiet, don't get grumpy because that just might be the way that they go. I'd like to talk about your questions as we go, but I'd ask you to trust me if I say, can I hold that for a later time, because it'll be impacting timing, or I will have something organised, or I don't know the answer and I need to go and fudge it somehow. If you guys can speak up, those of you in the room, it means I won't need to repeat things. I will most likely, so for those of you on the recording, we just ran around the room and had a chat about who we were. I will probably edit that out of the recording because it's probably not the sort of thing as interesting as all of you are that you at home want to listen to, and it'll be hard to hear. But when we ask questions, if I think that the recording doesn't pick it up, and because of where I'm sitting I can see whether it does or not, I will probably repeat or summarise. Also, to be fair, that's one of the ways that I think through the answers, is by trying to synthesise your question. This one's going to be hard. I am actually not expecting that most of you will have done all of the reading for this weekend now. I'm not going to ask any of you to confess, but if that is not the case, if you guys have done the reading, or if you're annoyed because I'm stopping because you've done the reading, can you just reach out to me privately? The reason I suspect people won't have done the reading is that for the face-to-face class, this new, very swishy reading list thing that I am so happy with, that works so well, actually wasn't available properly until Wednesday. And I didn't know that, and it's only because a student brought it to my attention because it worked perfectly well at my end. I don't think you had time to do all of the reading for the full 2 days. The fact that only one student brought it to my attention suggests that not a lot of you were really trying. But hey, as long as we're on the same page, I can work with that. But it will be important, particularly in relation to the takeovers stuff, to make sure that you get through at least the reading in the textbook next time around, because otherwise people, that for the last day, people will get lost, because there are a lot of statutory provisions and we will be moving backwards and forwards. And because I know who I am and the way that I work, I will most likely be talking about the provisions and their content rather than throwing numbers at you all the time. So it will be important that you've got that overview. What's next? Yeah, well, I've said that already. I will try and get back to you as quickly as I can. I'm surrounded by a sea of computers. Again, there's lots of science that shows you retain more information if you handwrite, so I would strongly encourage that. But again, the way this room's set up, it's actually pretty hard for you to distract each other. But if you are using your computer for something other than taking notes, following along with slides, stuff like that, you know, the usual suspects, Facebook, Instagram, eBay, porn, Gumtree, car.com, whatever it is, other people will be looking at what it is that you're looking at. It distracts other people. So, yeah, move your screen so other people can't see. I am sharing the slides in advance, but I do update them as I go. So I actually updated a few of them yesterday, so they will roll over. Again, great reason for using your computer, because you will get the most recent lot of slides and sort of think of the trees. I know a lot of people print out slides, but my slides aren't that good. They're better for looking at than they are for printing. Anything else that works for you guys that you would like to throw into the mix? One I can think of, because we are going sort of full days around here, I think my next slide, yes, is the schedule. Sorry. I would suggest that if you need a bathroom break, or you need to go and get a glass of water or something, or you just need a cath break, just walk out quietly, come back quietly when it suits you. I will work as hard as I can to pretty much stick to this schedule. So we'll have relatively long breaks for you to stretch your legs and sort things out. I've just realised that I haven't turned on the urn, which I might actually, when I do the next slide pack, ask somebody to run down and plug in the urn, because I bet Stephen hasn't thought to do it. And so we'll have a half-hour break from 10:30. We'll have a full hour for lunch and another half-hour break. I'm open to shortening that break in the afternoon if you guys are up for it, and leaving a little bit earlier, depending on how we feel. Again, partly just because I'm not 100%, and it takes a lot of my energy to look this slack. I'm going to need the hour break at lunchtime, and in particular. And with that, I'm actually going to ask if I can be rude and take an hour break, like literally get away from you guys, go and sit somewhere and be quiet, because I need that in order to just keep myself sane, literally, which is better for you when I'm sane, I promise. But again, I'm open to squeezing things up if that's what you guys want to do, but I will need those breaks this morning in particular. Again, it's going to take a bit of time to put these recordings together, because I will have 2 full days of them, and I do edit them for sound and take out the bits that are important or unimportant. So they will start coming through as soon as I can, but it's likely to be about 3 days before they're all out and about. So if you haven't got enough in the room today and you want a bit more cath, it'll be tomorrow sometime. But if you're listening to this recording now and thinking, why aren't the rest of them ready? Just be patient, they will come. My standard keys to success, you guys need to talk to each other, and that includes those of you who are online or those face-to-face students who aren't here today, talking to each other and working through how these things work will help you be better at what you're doing. You do need to do the reading, and you need to ask why. So just constantly when you read, just think, why has she asked me to read this at the simplest level? Why did this issue come up? Why is this case important? You'll note here that I'm using this idea of mirat. That's my language. That's what I learnt at law school. It's the same as Iraq, except I'm always looking for material facts at the beginning before I think about what the issues are, because you always, in order to work out the issues are, you've got to work out what's important in the scenario or the circumstance you've been given. So I've just added material facts. What is important at the beginning? And the T, probably I could say Mirac conclusion, but I think your conclusion is always tentative unless you're Justice Keifel and you've got the other guys agreeing with you. You're going to need to read and keep up to date here. This is a subject where we've got topical things in the news, that there are transactions that are happening all the time, and I want you to be looking out for them and thinking about how these work in the context of what we've been talking about. And again, attend means also listen to these recordings or watch these recordings. By the way, I'll make them available as audio only as well as the videos, because I believe that there are people in this group who would prefer audio only. So again, many of you will have seen a version of this before. This research goes back to Dewey, famed for as Sheldon Cooper calls it in The Big Bang Theory, the original internet, the Dewey Decimal System. So he was actually a scholar who looked at learning and how people retain information, and using that he came up with this idea that effectively the more active you are in your engagement with anything that you are learning, the more likely you are to retain information. So that research, which remains true today, shows that I'm going to retain 90% of what we do today, and if you just sit there and listen to me and do nothing else, you're likely to retain about 5% of it. So I win, and they pay me. How good is my job? And again, so that's one of the reasons too that I will do stuff like make my slides do silly little animations. It's not that I procrastinate. That is not why my slides are pretty at all. Another thing I think is really important, because this is a busy time of year, is that you really need to plan your semester ahead. I'm not sure if you are aware that firstly, the calendar that is in Canvas, you access it with that lovely little button there. This one is just populated with this course. I know it looks like you've got a whole lot of things due here, but you only have to do one of them. But if you're doing more than one course, it is likely to have everything for at least due dates. And if your lecturer's put in the classes, it'll have the classes in there as well. And you can take this little calendar feed button and put that into Outlook or your Gmail calendar or something as well, and make sure that you've got those things in where else you work out where your stuff is. Now, if that's your Facebook's event list, it probably won't work, but other than that, I think it's pretty handy. And because this is a really busy time of year, people will have family functions, people will have work end of year functions, the weather is nice, people have stuff to do. It is important that you build out the time, not just for the classes or listening to the recordings, but getting the work done as well. This is just another way of looking at that calendar, listing out the schedule. Again, you will have these successive lots of things that are due, but for each of the tasks, so task one, they're not listed that way. So each of the task one groups, you only have to do one of them. If you do more than one, your mark will be calculated based on the best mark you get. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Also in Canvas, that syllabus is a really useful resource. It's another way of looking at the same information. So, let's talk quickly about assessment. So, 40% of your mark in this class comes from your participation in 4 discussion board tasks. So we have 5 topics. This kind of introductory overview topic, and then our early stage capital raising topic basically are options in one of those discussion tasks. And then you have topic 2, there's a discussion task, topic 3, topic 4. For one of the topics, I think it's topic 3 from memory, I need to go and have a look at it, there's only one option. I needed to do that to make sure that we've got a level playing field, that it's easier to moderate, because when we do moderation of assessments, other people have to look at it, and when they're all over the place. So one of the topics, there's only one. So effectively you have choices to have a look at, and you're asked to respond to either a problem or a discussion prompt of some sort. You will not be able to see what other people have written until you have submitted your own. When you have submitted your own, you are asked to respond to anything else that is in there as well. One of the criteria, the assessment criteria, you'll be able to see them in the rubric, is about your engagement and the comments that you have made on others. There is a small possibility that some of you will end up doing something where nobody else responds, or where anybody else who does respond does so at the very last minute. If that happens, if there is nobody in there to respond to, I will extend the period of time for people to respond. And I will put something in myself for you guys to respond to, okay? So nobody will be left hanging out to dry. Having said that, it's not a bad or an unfair strategy to find somebody else who you might be working with to expand things, to actually have a discussion with. Radical idea, your actual voices, maybe even faces, hey, even in the same room over a coffee about the topic, then you might write up your own discussion and respond to each other in that way. I am very open to that. For those of you who are online, I am also very open to helping you have a Zoom meeting room through my account, or showing you how you can use Collaborate to do that. And if you want to actually record a discussion between you, and actually just have the recording of a discussion and put that in for that part, I am very open to doing that as well. Because, hey, discussion, there's supposed to be discussions, right? Sometimes we can get caught up in the technology and think about the tech. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, so I just have a quick question in regards to task 1. It says 4 contributions, 900 to 1,100 words. Is that each contribution, or...?
No. So your key contribution, I'm expecting in that, yeah, it's 900 to 1,100 words kind of. So it's 1,000 words plus or minus 10%, right? Is the kind of, so I'm expecting them to be at about that length, or they need to be about that for your key contribution. Your comment on the work of others, I'm not expecting that it will be anywhere near that length, but the way that you do that will depend on you. You might...
Each topic is 900 to 1100.
Yeah. 900. So think about it's 40% of your mark as a rough rule of thumb. 10% of your mark is roughly 1,000 words anywhere. Now, you know, plus or minus references.
So out of that 4, we just have to submit one.
There are 4 tasks. Each of them, other than one, has options. You submit one for each of the 4. So I could bring up, why don't I just do that for a second? Yeah, 4 times 10%. Does that am I making sense here? Yeah. So 4 tasks, 4 different due dates for task 1. Pick 1 from each group. So you will not get, if you pick 2 from group 1 and none from group 2, and then do 3 and 4, you will get a 0 for the second group, and you will only get a mark based on the best of the 2 submissions for the first one. So, yeah, it should be relatively straightforward. Okay. Excuse me, that must sound terrible in your ears. Basically, one of the reasons for that discussion board task, so you understand, is we cover a range of different topics, and if we, particularly without an exam, if we don't have topics that focus on each of the topics, there is a risk that you could just completely ignore a whole topic, and then at the end I'm not in a position to actually sign off, which is effectively what assessment is, that you've achieved the course learning outcomes. Okay, so then, due on the 22nd of December, your Christmas present to me, how awesome is that, given that I need to get you results back within 2 weeks of that time. On the 22nd of December, you are going to do a problem task. It's already sitting there in Canvas, so you can get started on it pretty quickly if you wish. And it is a traditional write a memo. It will not surprise anybody. You will be writing a memo to Dennis Denuto. I have a limited series of jokes. I pull them out each time. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. My plan is to do a couple of webinars on an ad hoc basis. You get 36 hours of me, and we need to make that up. We don't have 36 hours of teaching time. Some of it is made up through some additional materials, but I will take a bit of a work around today to work out what a good time for that would be, and one of those will be a feed forward discussion around the assignment in particular, and I'm thinking of doing that between the two, between the next lot. I might even be doing it from Cambodia. I'm just gloating that I'm going to Cambodia, aren't I? And then final assessment, not due until the 20th of January, which is a long time after our classes finish. Okay, there will be a risk that it will get lost and forgotten. I will not be able to start marking these until after that 20th of January, because up until that point you can overwrite it at any time if you submit early. But do feel free to submit early, because then it's done and out of your hair and you can have a summer. I would be going for that if I were you. Also, the content will be fresher in your minds. But again, for those of you who are having a summer, you have your plans, you're well organised, you have got a ton of time to do it in. And again, that is an essay, that's a critical assessment, critical analysis piece. You will be looking at some themes across the whole of this course, and again we'll do some feed forward in relation to that as well. And one of the discussion, or a couple of the discussion tasks, are critical analysis pieces, so you have the opportunity to get some feedback from me on your critical analysis writing as we go, if you want that.
So at least by the 15th of December, which is the last Sunday of the intensive, we should be able to pretty well get that essay.
Yeah, you should be able to get started on that, absolutely. And what we'll do is map out then some ad hoc catch-up times to that might work with people's plans for writing out that essay. So well, you tell me if you disagree. I don't see any particular reason why we need to pick a day a week and a particular time and say, okay, we're going to meet every second Tuesday at 4 p.m. Online. I think we can pick I'm not sure how many we'll need, probably 4 or 5 different opportunities to just do an hour together on different themes that can work at times that are going to suit the flow of the essay writing and different times so that, you know, a one size fits many as opposed to one size fits 1 or 2 is my plan. Again, I'll take feedback in relation to that as we go. If there is one thing that I could embed in everybody's mind, it would be that you need to look at the rubric for every course or every assessment piece that you do, because that is our Faustian bargain with you. Some assessment tasks you learn, particularly these kinds, because you do the work to learn about that thing, and so you can choose the discussion prompt that interests you the most and learn more about that. But a lot of assessment tasks are just ultimately about us making sure that you do the things that you need to do so we can sign off you've learned the things in the course learning objectives. And it just breaks my heart when people write really interesting stuff that doesn't answer the question or doesn't actually meet the criteria that we are assessing on. So take the time to just have a look at what those criteria are. Of course, my little GIF here is just showing a very broad one. You can't read it anyway. The point of this GIF is to really show you where you can find it, so you can find what the rubric is. But yeah, there are printable versions of it. The other thing that is always worth thinking about, and many of you are quite far through your degree, so you're aware of this, but each of the criteria hang ultimately on these criteria. Come in, Mohammed. Find a seat along the way. Somebody will move a bag for you. So all of the criteria are based on these things. So one of the things I personally really dislike about our criteria is I can only give you 80 or higher if you meet a high distinction criteria, which by its very nature means you have to distinguish yourself enormously from pretty much everybody else. So it's one of the reasons why our marks naturally move towards the middle. So it is worth thinking about and keeping in mind what these criteria are and bringing your originality. The way you get high distinctions is through your critical analysis, through your ability to synthesize, your ability to bring something of yourself and your own analysis into the material. And when you're doing a law degree, in particular, our expectations, particularly for the writing and presentation style, are particularly high. So it is pretty hard to get more than a credit in that particular criteria. It sucks. We don't mark to a curve, but because of these criteria, it can be hard to get the marks that you sometimes, sometimes I agree that I would like to give you those numbers, but I can't do it because of these criteria. It's probably less relevant discussion for you guys who have done more subjects. It's something I always feel, I wonder if I should be pointing this out in the last week of contract as well. Never know. So what is it that you get a high distinction for? In particular, it's this idea of synthesis. So undergraduate degrees are all about analysis, right? And it's about pulling apart the component pieces and understanding all of the components that make the thing that you are analysing. Once we get into a postgraduate situation, it's the synthesis we're looking at. It's that ability to not only pull it apart, put it back together again, but put it together again, understanding what each of the parts do, what the consequences are of adjusting or moving or replacing a part in some way. can you actually create it in a different way? That's what synthesis is about. It's your own creative, intellectual input. That is the most important thing. Texts. These ones are highly recommended. They are, oh, actually, there's this one. I'm actually working from, I think this is the 6th or the 5th edition. Can't remember. That's the cover that I have in hard copy in my room. That's the one I pick up and look at if I have to look at a piece of paper. To be quite frank, I haven't done that yet in the preparation of this because it's online. And Kath's bad eyesight in the index, not nearly as good as Control F or Windows F or what is it, that squiggly thing on an Apple computer, and F finding things in an electronic text. I reckon they are much, much better. These are the texts that you use in company law, so many of you should already have them and you will find them useful. For those of you who are yet to do company law, if you want to buy the text, you will use it in that subject. I believe it has an open book exam, and so you can't use electronic text, so you might find that it is more useful and it's worth the expense for this subject. And if it's only for this subject and you don't use textbooks in open book exams, and hint, I don't think it's an awesome idea to be reading a textbook in an exam, but maybe not having one will help you with that discipline. But anyway, everything is online. So in the reading list, so if you go into Canvas, you will see that there is a menu item which is reading list. When you click into that, you will see that there are notes and links to all of the readings. They should even go to the chapter of the book that I have asked you to read just by clicking in there. You can tick things off when you've read them. You can write notes in there, have discussions with people. You won't. Nobody ever does. I don't know why, but nobody ever does that. Like, why wouldn't you sit there on a Saturday night and tick off that you'd read a chapter and then put some comment on it like you were on Facebook? I don't know, outing yourself out as daggy as me is not something that you do, but you could.
So all the chapters of the textbook are accessed by Canvas on?
Yep, you can go straight there. In fact, if you are clever and you download, there's an app, the Canvas Student app, you should be able to do it on your phone or a tablet. Okay, so I've made sure that all of the resources that we're using are online. So, yeah, and this book is eye-wateringly expensive. It's actually been upgraded since I made this slide. I think there is now a 5th edition. It is quite pretty. If you are a practitioner in this space, and so if you are working in a law firm and you are actually doing takeovers work, this text is amazing. If you are a practitioner in this space, for example, you as a broker, you might find, and this is also available online, particularly the strategy parts of it are really interesting. Rod Levy is one of the preeminent lawyers in this space, but it is available online. Like I said, this one it's a nice little slim, quite well-written volume. It's effectively Freehill's in-house knowledge book of how to run takeovers. Yeah, but because all the other law firms can buy it, it is eye-wateringly expensive. It makes all of your other textbooks look like they were, problematic. This subject used to have an exam, and this used to be the prescribed, so the first time I came in, this used to be the prescribed textbook overall. I cannot recommend it more highly for actually working in the takeover space, but it is now only 1/5 of what we do, and but as a resource, particularly those of you who find it interesting, you would continue on with this one.
It's only $100.
Only $100?
Yeah.
There's a sale.
Whoa.
That's the preface, yeah.
When I bought it the first time around, it was about $500. My first version.
You want a paper copy and a digital copy.
Okay, they've clearly got, this is good. This market is being disrupted. It really annoys me that online texts are so expensive. And it also really annoys me when they charge you twice when you get it online and paper. I think there should be a tax for getting it in paper, and they should be much, much cheaper. That's actually really good to know. It's like, I just remember it hurt when I bought it. And why it particularly hurt is I bought it for a transaction I was involved in about when I was earning no money, none at all, about 6 months before I started teaching this course, and they gave me a copy for free. So it really hurt. I remember it was about $550. I only ever remember the price of really expensive things that aren't as good as I thought they were for that money. So I'm only just forgetting my Harry Potter ticket prices this week, you know. We will also use, this is an old friend to most of you who've done contract law with me, and we're going to use the Encyclopedia of Forms and Precedents in this as well, because, and again, actually the people, anyone, I guess Sigrid, and Mohammed, you were in my most recent law. We actually did a sale of business as part of this, so it's even the same bit. Sorry about that, I wasn't expecting the same area. So again, actually this is probably a bit old. LexisNexis AU through the library, it's now actually all linked in that reading list anyway, but we will be using some transaction documents that law firms use all the time to work through these kind of problems. And so, sorry, I won't, you'll find it here in the LexisNexis space. Yeah, so that's some resources for us getting started. Actually, just in case the recording stops, I'll just go back for a second. Any questions, concerns, frustrations? Not yet, but there will be. Sorry, that's a really, really long time for us to get started. I wanted to do another little exercise, but in fact, having said that I'm going to start and finish on time, which I always do at the very end, I'm going to take our break 1/4 of an hour early. We'll take half an hour, and then we'll